We've had a lot of good moments and good memories and good laughs. Yeah, it's always sad, you know. It shows how tough Formula One is, how tough it is to perform at the level you got to be at. But I have a lot of respect for him and what he's achieved already in his Formula One career and so on. I'm sure it's not over for him. I'm sure there's a plan B for next year. So
it goes without saying that Lando Norris is one of the best drivers on the grid, and his future is bright with McLaren. However, we're very close to seeing Verstappen and Norris as teammates at Red Bull. As of now, McLaren has secured him until the end of the 2025 season and has paired him with Oscar Piastri from 2023 onwards. Norris had 2 opportunities to join Red Bull, with the latest one being just a couple of months ago, prior to his extension with McLaren. So did Norris make a mistake, and what do he and Red Bull have to say about this matter? Lando joined McLaren in 2019 when he was placed as Alonso's replacement at McLaren. The 2-time world champion decided to take a sabbatical, and Norris was placed with Carlos Sainz Jr. as his teammate at McLaren. It goes without saying that Norris was full of potential back then, given the fact that he finished P2 in the F2 Championship just behind George Russell, who joined F1 in the same year as Norris in Williams. However, prior to Norris joining McLaren in 2019, there were huge talks about him joining Toro Rosso, now known as AlphaTauri. Hadn't Alonso taken a sabbatical and hadn't a place open for Norris, he would have likely signed with Toro Rosso as a replacement for Hartley. This would mean that Norris would have taken Albon's seat in 2019, and when Gasly was replaced with the Thai driver for the second half of the 2019 season, Norris would have been the guy that would pair Verstappen as his teammate. Christian Horner spoke about this matter, saying, "We've talked to Lando a couple of times over the years, but every time we've had a conversation, he's signed a contract with McLaren the next day. He's on a long-term contract with McLaren and it looks like he's going to be there for a few more years." Now, this is something that Norris has spoken about too, in an interview with Automotor und Sport, adding, "Of course there are talks with other people from time to time. You always ask yourself the question, what's best for my career? After all, I want to win races and win world championships. There have been talks with Red Bull. They're a team that's been in the top 3 for years, but that just shows even more how much confidence I have in McLaren. Although there were talks, I felt McLaren was better for me to achieve my goals. A chat's a chat. It's not like, what can we do straight away? Just keeping in touch, things like that. It's as simple as that sometimes. It was just coming to the end of the contract. You see what options are available. You just kind of find out what's possible, what might be possible over the next few years. It wasn't just Red Bull. Every driver has chats with a lot of the different teams on what could happen, and it's basically as simple as that. Now, it goes without saying that McLaren's competitiveness from 2020 and 2021 is now gone, and the 2022 version of the car is something that Norris isn't enjoying driving.
Lando Norris does get away very well, Daniel Ricciardo too, and Norris now leads George Russell, who's ahead of Carlos Sainz, with Ricciardo coming up alongside him, and Sainz is getting a good slipstream. Hamilton trying to go down the inside, into the first braking zone we go. Carlos Sainz locks up, going straight on, it's Fernando Alonso, it's Sainz in the lead.
The Woking-based team is struggling in the fight with Alpine for the P4 spot in the Constructors' Championship, and the only reason the team is this close to Alpine is the fact that the French team has struggled a lot with reliability issues. On top of that, Norris did have some issues with McLaren recently, especially after the Mexico GP, where he publicly called out his team for putting him on the wrong tyre tactic. He also said the team put Ricciardo on the exact same tactic that he wanted, which saw Ricciardo finish P7 and Norris finish P10. But nevertheless, let's say that Norris signed with Toro Rosso back in 2019 and was the replacement for Gasly in that same season and up until the beginning of the 2021 season. Could he outlive Albon, and could he give Verstappen a run for his money? It's quite likely so. Norris is an exceptionally good driver who understands the car very well and knows what the car needs in order to perform well. It's well known that Norris was able to outperform Ricciardo in 2021 and 2022, and it's not an easy job to do that to an 8-time race winner and a proven talent in F1. Although Ricciardo had a lot of struggles with the 2022 version of the McLaren car, it goes without saying that Norris was able to absolutely outperform whatever he was given from that car. Norris is currently the only driver in the 2022 season to manage to stand on the podium that isn't a driver for Ferrari, Mercedes or Red Bull. And on top of that, McLaren has been a one-man show for the majority of the season, with Norris being the only one that races with both Alpine drivers for decent points. Norris and Verstappen would be a match made in heaven. However, Norris would be a much bigger challenge for Verstappen than his other teammates, and we've seen that in his ability to outperform Ricciardo in McLaren. So if both of them were to be teammates at Red Bull, we would have likely seen a Mercedes 2016 situation for the second time in recent F1 history. Maybe they wouldn't be fighting for the championship in 2019 and 2020, given the fact that Mercedes destroyed their competition, but 2021 would have been a much more interesting season to watch had Norris stayed as Verstappen's teammate up until this point. And one thing that adds to this narrative is that Norris loves understeering cars, which the MCL36 isn't really one of. Unlike the MCL36, the RB18 is a very understeering car, something that Norris would have enjoyed driving. When talking about these types of cars, Norris said, "I hate understeering cars, and that's exactly the kind of car we have right now. I usually try to add wings to the front and change the mechanical balance of the car so it turns in steadily, but sometimes it's like you keep the understeer and add oversteer at the same time. I've always been a driver who wants an agile car but then lives with the consequences that the car just slides more in the rear. You have more control that way. An oversteering car does what I want it to do. If I want to steer a little more, it rotates. I can better control how I position the car for the turn. With understeer, it's different. I feel like the car is controlling me. When you're in the middle of a corner and understeer, you have to wait for a long time to accelerate. That feels like an eternity, even if only half a tenth is lost." Now, Norris does have an extensive knowledge of cars, and that is something that his team has been able to utilise perfectly when it comes to upgrading the MCL36. Although their hopes are very low when it comes to fighting Alpine for the P4 spot in the Constructors' Championship, Norris and Ricciardo would give everything that is in their power in order to beat the French team and take the extra money from P4. Although Norris was close to signing with Red Bull, the reality stands as it is, and it stands like this. Norris is currently committed to a long-term relationship with McLaren. This is the team that has Norris's rights until the beginning of the 2026 season, and the Briton is likely to extend this deal in the subsequent seasons. One huge reason for this is that Norris expects that the team will be competitive enough to win some games in 2024 and 2025. If the team does indeed manage to bring itself back to the top, rest assured that it will be because Norris helped them a lot. The Briton spoke about the comfort that the long-term contract with McLaren provides him, as he added, "I've always been happy with McLaren. As much as I could be happier, I've always been happy. Before I ever spoke to anyone else, my talks have always been with McLaren first. That's always how it goes. As much as sometimes you might like what could happen, the best thing for me is signing the contract that I have now. Just having that confidence that you're going to be in Formula 1 and the knowledge that you're going to be in Formula 1 for 3, 4 or 5 years. For me, that's like the best feeling, just because it makes you more relaxed and more comfortable in the environment that you're in." It goes without saying that Norris will have a difficult challenge ahead of him. And now that he and Piastri are resembling the youngest duo on the grid, it'll be difficult for him to outperform the youngster. Both of them will have to prove to the team that they can be the #1 guy in the team. And although Norris will have the upper hand in this task, it won't be easy as it was with Ricciardo. So, what do you think about Norris's chances of joining Red Bull in the past? Let us know in the comments below.